Hello and welcome to another English podcast with Paul. Again outside in the beautiful English countryside. Another beautiful day again, lovely weather, beautiful greens and browns and yellows and even purples. All the insects are out. You can hear the birds and the wind rustling in the trees. It's an absolutely fabulous day today. Okay, let's jump straight into it. I've never lived in the USA, but a lot of my students sometimes confuse the US or the USA with the UK in terms of society norms and lifestyles, and just sometimes forget that we're not exclusively the same. So here's just 10 points to clarify the difference between the US and the UK. Alright, so coming in at number 1, guns. In the UK, the police, some divisions of the police carry guns, like at the airport or maybe at a nuclear power station. But generally, nobody has guns. There are no guns, really. You might go years and never see a gun in the UK. Now, there is a tiny element, a very, very tiny element of gun crime in the UK, but there's much more knife crime. Now, this is very rare. Maybe there are gangs in London and maybe some fighting over drugs, but generally, I would say the UK is pretty safe. Alright, so guns, very, very rare. That's number 1. Number 2, fast food. We have McDonald's, KFC, and Pizza Hut, Domino's, things like that. But we don't have Wendy's. We don't have lots of the other famous fast food restaurants that they have in the USA. Fast food isn't super cheap in the UK. It may be cheap if you're out with the family and you're a long way from home, then yeah, you might get a McDonald's or a KFC. But generally, majority of the time, people eat at home and cook at home for the vast majority. Now, don't get me wrong, on a weekend, a lot of people, especially working class people like myself, will have a takeaway on the weekend, on a Friday night. You know, you're busy all week, you're tired. Friday night, treat ourselves, just have a takeaway. So takeaways are an expensive treat in the UK, but in the US, it seems that food is much more subsidized by the government. And so many families in the US or USA find it cheaper to eat takeout and junk food, and to feed their family on this food is cheaper for them than buying groceries. Seems like groceries are less subsidized, which is a big shame. You can see why there's an obesity epidemic in the US. Alright, but don't get me wrong, there are still a lot of obese people in the UK. Even in a little town where I live in the south of England, there's still a lot of people that I consider overweight, including children, which is very upsetting and frightening. Alright, number 3, cars and lorries. Alright, so cars, 99% of cars in the UK are manual, or as they say in the US, stick shift. Alright, means you have to change gear, put your foot on the clutch. And that's super common here. Not so much in the USA apparently. Another thing is, large vehicles here, such as lorries and buses, are predominantly automatic here in the UK to save on your knees. So most lorries here, Arctic lorries and rigid lorries, are automatic, but they're also very often they're new. Because it's a business, they put the cost of the lorry into the business, and they work out that it's cheaper to upgrade the lorry, say every 5 to 7 years, than it is to keep repairing it due to maintenance and things like that. So most lorries in the UK, like I said, are automatic. I passed my test 10 years ago. I've done agency work on lorries, and it's very rare that I've come across a manual lorry. Very rare. Now, I have worked for a coach company that was a bit older, and they've kept their coaches for a long time, and so I have had stick shift or manual coaches. All the public transportation, all the public buses are automatic. You just push a button and it goes. All right. Also, driving here as a young person is very expensive. Not just for the insurance, which I think for a young person now is around £2,000 to start, but also passing your test is, oh, nearly fell over then. Passing your test is very expensive. Costs a lot of money, takes a long time. It probably takes 2 months, maybe 3 months. We've got hazard perception test, theory test, and I think there's one more test as well before you actually get in the car with an examiner, and that examiner test will probably take about an hour, and most people, a lot of people fail it, or say a third of people fail it. It's not an easy thing. So then, talking about cars and lorries, size. Cars in the UK are generally smaller is better, and also our lorries, European style lorries, are not quite as big, not quite as long as the US lorries or even Australian lorries. So size. In the UK, things are a lot smaller. We don't really have like Big Gulp, which I think is like a name brand of a soda shake, a soda, like Coca-Cola, for example, or lemonade. In the UK, it's kind of like small, medium and large, and that's it. If you have any bigger than that, it's frowned upon. The government are trying to, or actively trying to, help people lose weight, because I said about the obesity epidemic. I'm a little out of breath myself now. I'm walking uphill. So yeah, even the houses and the roads are very small in the UK. Hence why we have to have a lot of driving practice before we can go out on our own. Okay, number 4, education. Education in the UK is free up until the level of university. Like, I don't know, like 19 years old. 19, I think. So I've said before, we have school up until the age of 16 years old. And then after that, you can go to, it's mandatory that you have to do further education. So you'll go on to college, which is 2 years to do your A-levels, if you choose. Or you can do an apprenticeship, like for a hairdresser, or plumbing, or catering, or something like that. So that's until 18. And then after that, then you can go on to university, you know, such as Oxford and Cambridge. We call it university. In the USA, they call that college. Tomato, tomato. It is what it is. Okay. So that's education. All right. Next on the list, healthcare. Healthcare in the UK is free. Yay! Although you might have to pay for, if you want glasses, you have to pay, well, I think that the cheapest pair of glasses is like 30 or 40 pounds. And you might have, some places give you free eye test, some places don't. And the same with hearing aids. So kind of like ancillary things. But healthcare is free. Any x-rays, anything you get done is free. Although you may have to wait a little bit. There are sometimes waiting lists. But you can get not transferred, but you can get an appointment for a specialist in whatever it is you're having problems with your ailments. But yeah, you can look at our NHS, we can have websites, we can choose to go to different hospitals, and to be honest with you, I think the care is 90% perfect. No system is 100% perfect. We have the government trying to give it difficult targets, so the government can say it's performing poorly, so they can sell it off privately and make some money for themselves. But that's the government, eh? Always trying to swindle the citizens of the country. Well, our government is anyway. Okay, so what was that? Healthcare. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with our healthcare system. It's looked after me multiple times. Next would be welfare system. Again, the welfare system is more society is frowns upon people that use the welfare system. Now there is two different types really. There's those that choose not to work, but that's not really a thing, because you have to prove that you've applied for X amount of jobs, and you have to prove that you're actively looking for work. And they can cut your benefits and your money at any point and investigate you and things like this. But generally, a lot of people in the UK, working class people, may have a top up. You know, we get a job and it might not be enough to pay for your rent and council tax and all your bills. So quite often there'll be a top up with various different names and different departments, so they can call it different things and change the statistics to fit their needs, the government. Other than that, if you're disabled, born disabled, or become disabled or injured, unable to work, then there's top up for benefit in that respect to help you pay for your living. Again, it's assessed as to how much you need, how much they're willing to pay towards your rent and things like that. So it's not an easy system to get into, but a lot of English people or UK people are gaslit, are told by the newspapers, the propaganda, that there's lots and lots of immigrants coming to the country, taking our benefits and taking our jobs and doing all these horrible things. But that's not the case really. It's just the government pays the propaganda to keep people in line and keep people looking away from the government. They want you to be blaming each other and blaming other people and blaming immigrants, when actually that's not the case. So that's the welfare system, again, which is pretty good. So if you're out of a job, you could claim benefits and prove to them that you're actively seeking employment. They can give you help with travel to the interviews and things like that, and other benefits and help and support. There's also a lot of support in other aspects, whether, for example, you have a child with additional needs. Again, that's all free, but you have to fight tooth and nail and get a doctor to say, yes, your child has this condition or that condition. Again, so it's not given out willy-nilly. It's quite difficult to get. You have to build up a lot of evidence, and it takes time. So that's for the children. Same with if you're struggling with substance abuse. There is help, but again, you've got to find it. You've got to fight for it. It's not given out willy-nilly. It's really not. So you got to fight for everything. But unfortunately, when you're suffering with an illness, or when you're suffering with depression or addictions, then it's very difficult to know how to access these support networks and these groups. And often the case is that they come too late. You have a crisis, You fall through the cracks and you fall through the safety nets, and then you end up in a very bad situation before they actually help you out with support, money, and medical help or counselling or whatever else. So it is there, but it's just hard to get at. You know, every penny counts this day and age, you know, in times of austerity or whatever the government want to say it is. Okay. Number 8. This one's interesting. Litigation. Now in the UK, we don't really sue anybody else. Now, if I'm going to talk to a big bloke and insult him and he punches me in the face, that's my fault for being a moron. If you fall down a hole and there's a cover around it saying danger, hole, and you fall down it, it's your fault for being a moron. So unless something really bad happens to you, or something that's really wrong and you've got evidence to prove it, you could go to a solicitor, we call them solicitors, and take somebody to the small claims court. You can also do unfair dismissal and things like that. But generally there is no suing of somebody else. You don't take people to court because it costs too much money. And we hope, not always the case, but we hope that the judge in question has a sensible head on his shoulders and makes a good decision to say, no, this is your fault, or this is just a pure accident, in which case it would get thrown out. So for example, if you were defending yourself, somebody come at you and started abusing you verbally and then tried to attack you, and you prevented it and they got hurt, they couldn't sue you. They couldn't do anything to you. Anyway, so litigation, not big thing here in the UK. All right, well, I've forgotten. No way. Okay. So this next one, I apologise if I don't articulate it in a politically correct fashion. But race and creed. So here in the UK, I think a lot of the time we try to be politically correct. We try to be, how do I put this? A bigger person. All right, we try to improve ourselves. I think deep down, we all want to be like the Queen. We all want to be educated. And so when we see people from non-native UK, we kind of have to automatically assume they are from the UK. Because back in the 1950s and 1960s, like a lot of other countries, there was a massive amount of immigration. And I think that was perpetuated by our own government. We asked for all these people to come here. We invited all these people to come here. So more so in the big cities, you'll see a lot of non-white people. I don't know if that's a term or a phrase, but generally we assume that everybody is British. If you can speak British, English, then we assume you're British. You might have been here since the 1950s, or your parents or your grandparents, so we consider you British. And you will know about our traditions and cultures, like car boot sales, or Sunday roast, or a full English breakfast, and some silly little idiosyncrasies that our country has. So everybody is British, and is assumed that until otherwise said. If somebody says, no, I'm not English, I'm Chinese, we would say, oh, okay, cool. Do you want to help me with this, or are you enjoying being in our country? We are generally trying to be polite and hospitable to everybody. And that's just the way it is in the UK. Even kind of like sickly polite sometimes. But in the big cities, everybody gets on with it. everybody is just trying to get along with their day, just trying to do their work, trying to do their job. And so there's not a huge amount of cultures doing different things. There's not a huge amount of cliquey, separate cultures. There are areas that I wouldn't go to late at night specifically, and that's not because of any colour or creed. To be honest, I think the English white lad is more dangerous than anybody else. If I'm likely to get beaten up whilst I'm in London, it's likely to be a young white lad with a knife. We call them hoodies, teenagers. It's more likely to be a white hooded teenager. I think a lot of people from other cultures generally have a lot more respect and try to assimilate into the culture, and that's what we want to see. I think it's the same for a lot of countries. They want to see that people are trying to assimilate. But everybody is just considered British. And unless you say I'm not British, we just assume you're British. We know that you have the same struggles as us. The government are a pain, prices are high, we've all got to work hard. And so we don't discriminate. You're going through the same hassle and problems that I'm going through, probably. And so we don't discriminate. No matter where you're from, it's kind of a bit of British culture, like, oh, the weather, blimmin' hell, oh, we're all in this together. Oh, the government, oh, what can you do, eh? Oh, the NHS, brilliant. But they need more nurses, they need more doctors, they need more resources that the government are trying to sponge away from them. So the British and the UK, we kind of understand we're all in it together, and we don't really discriminate in general. I'm sure there is some discrimination. I would be naive to say there's none. So there is discrimination. And the discrimination that I felt as a white man has often been to people of the opposite gender getting jobs that I've applied for because of equality targets. So that's the only negativity, I suppose. But otherwise, everybody is pretty polite until you get into the cities where people are much more focused on hustling and doing their thing. But anyway, so we don't really have a lot of segregation between different races or nationalities. But number 10 is classes. There is a little bit of discrimination, although they all deny it. There is a little bit of discrimination from those that are from a different financial background. Those that are more towards aristocracy and things like that. Let's keep moving. So what have I got? I got classes, being modest, politeness and education. You can tell this is how the English are discriminatory. We are often discriminatory against people with a lesser education, a lesser financial background than ourselves. The moment an English person opens their mouth, you can tell roughly what sort of class they're from. So if I was to use profanities, swearing, and be agitated, this is not always the case, but it's a quick indication. So somebody of a low education, a low class, would be oh, hey, what's going on here, mate? And they generally are a lot less able to articulate their feelings and their thoughts in a concise way to deliver a message. And so a lot of the time that will be shrouded in not violence but in intimidation. They would know that they are less educated and less affluent, financially affluent, and so their safety mechanism, their defense, is to be aggressive and intimidating. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? You want some of this? That's the default to protect themselves and their dignity and their pride. Often we'll see that with traveller communities. I have utmost respect for every community, and the traveller community live and die by the sword, and they have their principles and their values. And one of the things they are known for is their ability to defend themselves. So that would be one class. Another class, you might say, is the middle class. Generally have more finances and resources and connections. And they're trying to elevate themselves. And then above that, again, you would have upper middle class. And those that are more privileged and lucky with even more connections, and also they have heritage. So modern money is vulgar. So if you won the lottery, or if you got money from some quick means, is more vulgar. But if you have heritage, where you have royalty in your blood, or if you have a dame or lord or sir in your family, that gives you the heritage. And maybe you've got a chateau in France, maybe you've got a big country house. So this old money is much more privileged and much more admired amongst almost everybody else. And then of course at the very top you've got the elite class, and they're often don't work at all. They have so much money and so much free time, they'll often just say they're helping a charity. Oh, my charity raised 15 million on the weekend. Oh, we had a lovely gala. I can't pronounce the RP very well. Received pronunciation. So yeah, we have distinct classes, and that's generally how we discriminate against each other. Which is awful. And also there's accent. Like I said, when somebody opens their mouth, you can understand where their background is, where they're from, financially and education wise, but also with regards to an accent, you can tell what part of the country they're from, and whether you like that part of the country or not, or whether you like that football team or not. Often has a small bearing on whether you get on well with that person and you can connect with that person. But your average person in the street, generally you give a little nod to, as if to say, all right, you know, I'm not an enemy, I'm not here to get in a fight with you, all right then. And you can do that in every town and city, and 99% of the time it's perfect. So that's it really. That's the 10 main differences that I thought were interesting to talk about between the US and the UK. If you've got experience or knowledge of yourself between the US and the UK, and I've missed something out that's really obvious, please let me know in the comments below. Tell me what I've missed, or tell me what you enjoy or what you noticed that are main differences between the US and the UK. I'd be happy to hear it. Okay, that's it for today. Take care. Bye bye.